Most people know I love the social discipline window. I love the social discipline. I take prime time to focus on the social discipline window, right? And so because I think it just provides an awesome framework, right? And it's something that people can walk away from, continuing to think about. Um, so what do you all like about the social discipline window? How do you use it as a framework? How can people use it as a framework to understand this work and themselves inside of it?
I see it as a reflective tool. So if I don't know when in times of stress and times of conflict how I naturally operate, then I may be unintentionally causing the disconnection that I'm trying to do away with. So it's a recognition of who I am, when I am, why I am, and then how can I start to undo it.
Yeah. So a lot of restorative practices, when you're new to the game and you're just learning, it can feel like intangible. The social discipline window for me is something I can kind of reach out and touch, and it's immediately practical. I can apply it to my relationship with my children at home, for example. And I love like the aha moments that I kind of see in people's eyes when I ask them to consider deeply, how do you exercise your power with people you are in relationship with? And don't you want to show up in this world as the best version of yourself? And don't you want to invite people to do that with you? And really the only place that you can accomplish that is in the with box. So it is, I see it not only as, a practical measure or strategy, but it is, it's divine in that it really pushes me to kind of stand up in my integrity and invite other people to do the same.
I feel like I struggle a little bit to have the words to describe this, but I think the framework creates a safe kind of context to have conversations that I think a lot of people struggle with having, right? So I think even in terms of supervising people and trying to point out some of those behaviors that are in the 2 box, that are in the 4 box, and even in my own practice, in my own, when I've led other people and supervised other people, that can be a difficult conversation to have, and people get defensive and push back against things or whichever. But being able to take the social discipline window and take that construct and lay it out, kind of almost puts it out there, right, for us to be able to talk about things in a way that's a little bit safer, right? And going along with some of the things that you just said there, it still honors the strengths that you bring. It doesn't say stop that or this is a waste of energy in this space, that this is critically important, whatever that strength might be. How do we balance it with some of these other aspects to be in the with box, right? But I think it's just, I have been involved and I've in coaching in schools. I've seen really, really deep conversations, honest, vulnerable conversations when they're just applying that social discipline window. It seems to create an element of safety.
Yep.
I remember a couple years ago in conversation that we were having, and this radical notion of let's change the terms on the social discipline window, right? And what I'm calling social discipline 2.0, right? Where we take the words control and support, which have historically been associated with the social discipline window, and replace them with challenge and connection. And since doing that and putting that out there into this work, I really feel like it's made that framework, this framework, even more applicable, right? For instance, we talk about, in healthy relationships, control has no place, but challenge certainly does, right? And the difference between support and connection. So, what's one of the challenges that you all find when we're thinking about, or people are thinking about the social discipline window? One that I know is people get stuck on the idea of being identified in a box. And so I'm a 2 as though I'm made once and for all, or I'm a 4 and I'm made once and for all. So has that been your experience as well as you're working with it?
I think for me, it's the fear of identifying yourself in the not box. A lot of people don't like to go there. There's a little bit of shame that happens when you identify in that box. But just being authentic and saying sometimes you need to be there. Sometimes you need to pay attention to why you're there. There's something deeper going on that is asking you to press a little bit further. So just really pay attention to why you're in that space and not seeing as a horrible person because you're there, but there's something that's calling you to be there. So you need to recognize that so you can move forward into being more restorative.
Yeah, I think just being very aware of what are some of the things that move you to the different boxes, I think is really, really critical. And I think if you're not aware of that, then that could be a real challenge. And, so doing exercises where, what has a tendency to move you into these spaces and have you respond in these particular ways, I think is really interesting. And one of the things that came up for me personally, I talk about being in the 4 box all the time and doing all of that. But one of the things I realized was, yes, I'm a 4. Unless I'm in a room full of 4s, like if everybody's a 4, then I get impatient with that, and then I become a 2. You know what I mean? I'm like, come on now. And I think what happens is because there's elements of the 4 which I don't like seeing in myself, and when I see it externally manifested all around me, I think I identify some stuff that I want to be different in my own life, and then I have a tendency to jump into the 2 box to do some of those things. So I think it's interesting seeing what moves you in those different spaces.
Yeah. I wouldn't call this a challenge, but just something that I notice, and it's that people feel justified in being in 1 box, right? Like I'm in the 2 box, I surrender all control to the conditions, and there's nothing I can do but operate in this way because of how people are behaving around me, and just really very comfortable relinquishing any decision making. Yeah, you can't be in the with box by yourself. Folks have got to roll up their sleeves and kind of join you there. But as the authority in that space, as the adult, I can model emotional intelligence and again work to pull you into my peace rather than kind of joining you in your chaos because I feel like the conditions aren't ripe for me to be my best self. Like that's when you're really tested. Of course, it's easy to be in the with box when you're in a room with a bunch of restorative practices practitioners and everybody knows what that looks like. But when it hits the fan and you have a child who's exhibiting this really very challenging behavior, that's when you figure out if you have the juice or not.
If you have the juice or not. I like that. I like that.